Good afternoon to Honorable Speaker of the session, respected Director and my colleagues. Uh, Today we are really fortunate to have Sir as a speaker of the session. Before he speaks, it's my pleasure to introduce our college as well as our respected director. Calcutta Business School was established in the year of 2008 and as a unit of much esteemed Shikshayatan, 100 years old Shikshayatan Foundation under the visionary leadership of Sri S.K. Birla. CPS offers 2 years full-time autonomous AICTE approved postgraduate diploma in management. So far 11 batches have passed. Our students have made us proud of their achievements in the corporates. Our boys and girls are working in various capacities in different corporates like KPMG, Deloitte, Ernst Young, then Federal Bank, Wells and Fargo, Amazon, GlaxoSmithKline, Nestle, then ITC, HUL to name a few. Apart from their performance in corporate sector, we are also proud of our boys and girls who have become entrepreneurs in diverse sectors like food and hospitality, traveling, then fashion. These are the few sectors where our boys and girls have become entrepreneurs. During these 11 years of journey, CPS has been recognized and rewarded by some prestigious awards like Asia's fastest growing school in 2014, ranking by FICCI, then Career 360, Outlook, Mint, to name a few. Now it's my turn to, it is my pleasure and honor to introduce Professor Dr. Jain Mukhopadhyay, who has joined as director to our institute on 9th of September 2020. Dr. Jain Mukhopadhyay is an alumni of IIT BHU and IIM Calcutta and Jadavpur University. He has 17 years of illustrious industrial experience, where he had worked in several prestigious organizations like Srei Capital Markets, BOC India, Bamal Lorry, IPP, Algain Kuwait, at top managerial positions like National Head, Vice President, etc. As a distinguished faculty member, Dr. Jain Mukhopadhyay has taught at several much esteemed institutions like IIM Calcutta, IIM Rohtak, IIM Ranchi, IIM Bodh Gaya, IIFT for more than 18 years. He has been speakers at various conferences and workshops organized by several chambers like CII, CMA, and provided corporate training to higher management officials of reputed organizations like Tata Motors, Metal Junction, Titan Industries, Peerless Securities, McNally Bharat, to name a few. Professor Jain Mukhopadhyay is a founding professor and dean of Globsin Business School. He has worked there for more than 12 years, and he was the instrumental behind the transformational growth of Globsin Business School. He became then director of J.D. Birla Institute, and under his leadership, J.D. Birla has become a much sought after institute in the Eastern India. He has been a director of and professor of Heritage Business School. And as I said that he joined our institution on 9th of September 2020. Under his leadership, we all are striving towards center of excellence to a transformational path, and we emphasize on corporate speak, corporate connect, and corporate speak for enriching our students' practical exposure, apart from the theoretical understanding of the subjects. And it is really our fortune and privilege and honor equally to have Mr. Subir Chakraborty, who is a renowned professional in his area, and to share his vast experience with our students. So without any delay, it's my pleasure to hand over the session to Dr. Jain Mukhopadhyay.
Thank you, Professor Sanjeev. Thank you. Professor Sanjeev, you can hear me, right? Clear?
Yeah, I can hear you, sir.
So I am wanting to accord a very warm welcome to our keynote speaker of the day, Sri Subir Chakraborty. And I also want to welcome him both on a personal behalf and on behalf of Calcutta Business School. I also want to, welcome all the faculty members and the students who have joined and the outside participants. So, as you know, Subir Chakraborty sir is alumni of both the prestigious IIT Madras and IIM Calcutta. He was my senior at IIM Calcutta. So as you know, September is a very busy month, and he's not only a professional, he's a leader. He's a deputy managing director, means he's absolutely the number 2. And it has happened, Shubhita, many times that when I've invited someone as a vice president of Institute of Company Secretaries, after they finish our webinar, after a few months, they become the president of the thing. I've also had people who had come as deputy managing director in my webinars, and after a few months, they become the managing director. So I think by statistical thing, I'm expecting Mr. Shubhit Chakraborty to become managing director of Excite. That is my expectation. And I think, sir, the topic today is building resilience in organizations during a crisis. As we know, Mr. Shubhit Chakraborty has worked with very good companies like Bamalori, Berger, and now he is the person. If India is riding on Excite, it is because of Shubhit Chakraborty to make Excite the market leader. Like like whenever I have to think of buying a tire, I might decide which one to buy. But if I have to buy a battery, if I have to recommend someone a battery, I'll always think of Excite. So Excite shares have also done well in the last few years, and that's why we call it market capitalization has done very well. It's a company with a lot of assets, and under Mr. Shubhit Chakraborty's guidance, the growth has happened practically without any debts. We read in newspapers that most companies, they're going down under whenever there's huge debt. If there's no debt, then the company cannot go down under. Today, Vodafone has gone down under. So many companies have gone. If the Reliance Anil Ambani Group has gone down under, it is because of huge debt. So the one thing notable is that the company Excite has grown, the brand equity has grown, and yet the company has not taken any debt. And we are very happy, sir, that is one of the few good Calcutta-based companies, which is doing so well all over India. So that makes us very proud. And I joined on 9 September, so I'm less than 20 days old. But when I thought I should do a corporate connect, as the students and faculty know, this is the first corporate connect after my take as director. And I thought the best way to inaugurate the corporate connect will be by an eminent person like Mr. Shubhit Chakraborty. Once I think we get his blessing, I think we'll get other people to come in. So basically, as we know, we are going through a very, very uncertain time. That even an uneducated person knows today. Everyone is personally affected. Excite is still doing well. So we call it the VUCA times, the volatility, uncertainty, complexity and ambiguity. So it's there. It's a huge, huge problem. But the way he's negotiated Excite is very good. Other thing, I would like Mr. Shubhit Chakraborty to go beyond the topic. All the students here have one thing in common. They all want to do very well in their life. They all want to be successful, like Mr. Shubhit Chakraborty. So we want Sri Chakraborty to tell us the secret sauce. Is it simply hard work? Is it a lot of discipline? Is it replying to emails in time? And also one very difficult thing which happens in corporate, which if Mr. Chakraborty can tell, how to manage your boss. Because bosses are not always very good in the corporate, they're very tough. So this is something which you cannot find in a book. So I think we are at now 95 not out now. It was 70 when we started. So we are 95 not out. So that's a very good thing. And I'll request all the students to have paper and pen and note down whatever Chakraborty is saying. And after half an hour, we'll open the chat box so that if all the faculty, Shubhita, even the marketing faculty, operation management faculty, IT faculty, all are attending our webinar. So I think I'll request all of them to take this opportunity to ask questions in the chat boxes. And I think we may not will take all the questions, but at least we'll take some of the questions directly. Please be very attentive. Please take down notes because, because of our friendship, Mr. Shubhit Chakraborty may not be charging us. But normally this kind of a session with 1 hour session with such an eminent person will be of a very, very high charge. If it was done on professional basis, right? So just because he's been so kind to us and, spending time on a Saturday afternoon with us, we should be very reciprocating that by giving a full attention. And I don't want to hear from any student that you have network issues. Anyone, Ashish Kobi has network issues, we must take his class on Monday for that student, right? So with that few words, I would like to have the pearls of wisdom from Mr. Shubhit Chakraborty. So welcome, sir. And you, sir, please take over.
So thank you, Joyanto, for that warm welcome, and that I feel very flattered by the words you say. Any case, first and foremost, I would like to thank Calcutta Business School for giving me the opportunity to interact with the students and faculty. It is always a pleasure for me to interact with young minds and also eminent people like your faculty who are in the field of education. So it is always very refreshing and very, very energizing for me. So without any further ado, I'll come straight to the topic, and I will try to stick to the topic. If you have questions, I will request Joynto, or if you can do it yourself or delegate it to someone, so that, because I won't be able to look at the chat box while I'm speaking.
We understand. We understand.
If somebody can ask me the questions later on, then
no, I will personally the motive. No problem. Please go ahead.
Okay. Now, so when we are talking about resilience, I want to put this talk in the correct context. Now, organizations can be classified in various ways. One way to do it is to classify it according to its character or DNA. Now, one way to do it is to put it in either of the two buckets, explore or exploit. I will just explain what these two terms mean. When you talk about exploit, you are talking about building in efficiencies within the organization and trying to exploit whatever opportunities are available within the boundaries of the business that you are handling. And when I say explore, it refers to the startups and the the business ideas which are flourishing today in the corporate sector. And there are organizations which are able to blend the two. There are organizations which operate in either one of the buckets. That is also possible. And as I have said, there are organizations which try to blend the two. Now, today my talk is basically going to address the exploit bucket. I'm not going to talk about explore because that is a wide subject and that requires a separate discussion. It deals with innovation strategies and so on and so forth. So I will not deal with that. So what I'm going to deal with is that you have an organization which is going through a crisis. You may define the crisis as this pandemic or something else, whatever it is. So how do you build resilience in an organization during a crisis, an existing organization? So what is resilience? Now, for those of you who are engineers, you may have heard of stresses. So there is something called a bending stress, like a bridge or a suspension which is there, it undergoes bending stresses. Now, bending stresses are very unique in character because you just imagine a pack of cards when you are trying to shuffle in the way the professional card players shuffle the cards. You know, the topmost cards, they bend a lot, and in between you have some cards which bend less, and then again at the bottom the cards bend again. So you have a situation in which the topmost layers undergo elongation and the bottommost layers undergo compression, and in between you have a neutral layer. This is the uniqueness of a bending stress as it happens. So why am I mentioning this? Why is it important in today's discussion? Because you must understand, when an organization is going through crisis, it is facing both types of crisis. It is getting stretched and it is also getting cornered. So a typical example from the engineering space would be that it undergoes some kind of bending stress, because there are areas where you feel very stretched because of a crisis, and there are areas where you feel very, very cornered. You don't know what to do. So resilience, where does resilience come in? Resilience is the capacity to absorb stress, recover critical functionality, and thrive in altered circumstances. This is what resilience is all about. Why is it important? Because, as Joynto sometime back expressed, that because companies are having to operate in VUCA times. Now, what is unique about VUCA? We all know what is VUCA. volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. The thing about VUCA is that there are known unknowns and unknown unknowns. Now, what are known unknowns? Known unknowns could be that Pakistan will attack India. That is known. What is unknown? You don't know which sector it will attack. So China might attack India, that you know, but you don't know from where, Eastern Ladakh, Western Ladakh, where. What are unknown unknowns? This pandemic is a typical unknown unknown because you never knew about it. Suddenly it has fallen into your lap and it is an unknown entity. You don't know how to deal with it. So, because we are operating in VUCA times, you need to be able to become resilient. Now, why are we talking about resilience? Because traditional management structures are not geared for resilience. So what are the limitations in traditional management approaches towards managing and measuring resilience? Companies are traditionally geared for the following: maximization of shareholder value, maximization of short-term returns. In fact, when I was doing my MBA, we had a professor who used to say that short-term CEOs have long-term careers and long-term CEOs have short-term careers. Because you are measured for the short term all the time. What is short? You know, quarter-on-quarter growth, half-year-on-half-year growth. A day might come when you are talking about month-on-month. So it's very, very geared towards immediate return because the shareholders, they expect quick returns in the stock market. Thirdly, companies are traditionally geared for creating and executing stable plans. This is what companies are best geared for. The traditional company, you make long-term plans, then you execute them. So basically, managers are trained and skilled in creating plans and then executing them on the assumption that the environment will be stable. Unfortunately, in today's context, environment has become unstable. And the fourth, each company normally treats itself like an island for individual optimization. What do I mean by this? Every company tries to optimize or maximize its PBT, its other ratios, financial ratios, as if nothing else exists. It only has to maximize or optimize the performance ratios, almost operating like an island. What is missing from this approach is that you totally miss out on the reality of interdependence. Why is this important? Because no company actually operates in an island. It is operating in an ecosystem where you have various stakeholders. You have your vendors, you have your customers, you have your employees, and ultimately you have to understand one thing, that this is a very, very simple theory in systems, that if you optimize the subsystems, and if you consider the company to be a subsystem, then you cannot ever optimize the system as a whole. In order to optimize the system as a whole, you have to sub-optimize the subsystem. What does it mean? It means that the company has to understand the reality of interdependence and be in a position to optimize the entire ecosystem as a whole, because in the prosperity of the ecosystem lies the prosperity of the company, particularly in times of crisis. For example, if your vendors close down, you may be operating very efficiently, but if your vendors close down, will you be able to operate? You will not be able to operate. Or if you do not take care of your employees, you may be an efficient company. Will you be able to operate? you won't be able to operate. So therefore, you need to take care of each and every element on which you are dependent to be able to really optimize. And in that optimization, you may not be able to maximally optimize your organization, but you will ensure the longevity of your organization. And in times of crisis, this becomes more important. So managing resilience therefore calls for much more than grafting a few tools and techniques on the traditional system. So if you imagine that I will pick up some tools, some techniques from somewhere, and I will graft them on the traditional company, it will not result in resilience. It calls for a new mental model, willing to work with a new set of paradigms. So how does a company not only absorb environmental stress, but also adapts and transforms the adverse situation to one of comparative advantage? So crisis does not mean that this is the end of the world. There is always an opportunity in crisis. And it's not singular, there are multiple opportunities in a crisis. And a resilient organization will be able to spot those and take advantage of those so that it builds on its own comparative advantage vis-a-vis its competition. So, how do you build resilient companies? The first thing is, again, as I said, you have to depart from traditional models. So the first thing is functional redundancy. What does that mean? It means that earlier theory was that if you had a factory, a large factory in one place, you would be very efficient. You would be able to derive major savings in costs, and therefore you would be able to price your products much better in the market vis-a-vis your competition. Now, functional redundancy puts that theory on its head because it talks about duplication of elements or factories or suppliers for same components. Why? Because in a period of crisis, take this pandemic for example, one of your factories might close down. If you have only one large factory, then what will happen is that your organization will come to a grinding halt. Whereas, if you have a distributed manufacturing setup, as is there for Exide, for example, we have 7 fairly large battery factories. So even if one factory closes down, it does not mean the organization comes to a halt. But it could happen in a situation of pandemic that many people could get affected, and in which case the local authorities could ask you to close down the factory. But if you have built-in redundancies, then the chances are that while one of your units might close down, you will still survive. The same thing goes for suppliers. Again, rules of efficiency will tell you that you should have 1 or 2 very, very efficient suppliers. But functional redundancy will advise you that you need to have multiple suppliers so that even if one supplier is badly affected, why only pandemic? It could be an earthquake, could be floods, then you are not left high and dry. Next one, diversity of responses as opposed to standardization. What does that mean? Employing people from diverse backgrounds. Why is it important? Because in a situation of crisis, you need multiple ideas. You need lateral thinking. You cannot have straight-jacketed vision. So you require to build an environment that fosters multiple ways of thinking and doing things. This is very important. You must have gender diversity. You must have diversity of people from different cultures, different places, because each one of us, we carry with us the thought processes which have developed through childhood and through our adult career. And they are necessarily very different. So when you have diversity, you have multiple ideas for solving the same problem. And that comes in handy because in a situation of crisis, you do not always know the answers. But you require to brainstorm and find out which will be the best way to do things. Next one is modularity. What does this mean? It means that if you create this concept of modularity in your organization, then even if one module fails, the other modules are able to function. What do I mean? For example, you can have multiple SBU structures within your organization. This comes in very handy. If you take a company like Vamalori at one point of time had 22 profit centers. So even if one profit center, is paralyzed due to the crisis, the other 21 can function. So this is how you can build in modularity within your organization, by creating smaller self-sufficient structures. The SBU structure, incidentally, is a good example of modularity. Next is adaptability. What is adaptability? See, we have evolved to this stage only because human beings have been adaptable. And as we have adapted to new environments, new challenges, we have evolved. So it is the ability to evolve through trial and error, the way natural systems and species have evolved. What is the advantage of being adaptable? Advantage of being adaptable is that you are able to respond to changes in your environment. Because you must understand one thing, it is not the strongest of the species which have survived, but the most adaptable. Dinosaurs lived for 160 million years and yet they perished. So, if you are adaptable, you are able to respond to changes in the environment and in the process change your own behavior towards the change which has happened in the environment and be able to survive. So it calls for new ideas, new processes, and an openness of mind to be able to accept these changes. So next one is prudence. So the principle of prudence, it operates on the precautionary principle. What it states is that if something can possibly happen, it eventually will. So therefore, what do? You build in contingency plans. You cannot have just one plan in a situation of crisis. If the enemy is after you and you are running from the enemy, you need to continuously think that if this doesn't work, then something else will. So you need to have contingency plans, and more importantly, you need to stress test your plans continuously. And while the stress testing itself can be stressful, but it is very, very important. Next is embeddedness. What is embeddedness? Alignment of a company's goals or activities with broader systems. Critical for long-term success, such as embedded in supply chains, business ecosystems, economies, societies, and natural ecosystems. You must understand, as I've said earlier, that an organization is not an island. It operates within a community, within an ecosystem. So, what you are doing, is it inviting any resistance? For example, you take a company like ITC, which manufactures cigarettes. You know, there is a lot of negative campaign against, or not negative campaign against cigarettes, because it's not considered a good thing. It causes cancer and so on and so forth. So what you are doing, how is the community viewing you? This is important because the blessings of the community will be necessary for your long-term survival in a situation of crisis. And it's not only the community, it is the supply chains, business ecosystems, economies, societies. So you should be in a sweet spot with respect to your community, respect to ecosystem, so that in a time of crisis, when the going is really tough, you will be able to draw upon the support of this entire community. Next is migration strategies. So what does this mean? It means that in a situation of crisis, you should be able to allocate capital quickly to a zone or an area or a business which you think can derive the maximum benefit or which you think has been able to identify an opportunity. So some quick-footedness, quick-footed thinking is required, where you will be able to quickly allocate capital where it's required. So, for example, in a situation of crisis, let's say this pandemic, you need to empower your sales team to be able to operate safely, follow all safe practices, and be able to institute those safety mechanisms very quickly in your factories, in your establishments, sanitization procedures. So all these things you need to do very quickly. You cannot think in terms of, you know, the normal, in a normal situation, you would spend a couple of weeks trying to understand, trying to brainstorm what are the steps which would be required. But in this situation, you need to act very quickly and you need to allocate capital quite very quickly. Now, for example, a company which is, let's say in the consumer goods space, and you take the situation of this pandemic, the retail sales may have suffered because people may not be coming to the shops, or in the case of a mall, people may not be going to a mall. You need to then quickly allocate capital for home deliveries. That is immediately required, because if you do not do it, you will be sitting, you will be high and dry, while others would have taken advantage. So when I say there is an opportunity in every crisis, this is the opportunity. Opportunity is home delivery, safe home delivery. How would one be able to do that? So, but this will not happen just by saying so. You need to allocate capital very quickly. Environmental shaping, that is the next point. Now, this is possible if you are an entrepreneur or if you are trying to, you know, create a business which was not there earlier. For example, you can take Swiggy. Now, when Swiggy came in, perhaps this home delivery system was not there. They were one of the pioneers, I think. And when you are doing that, there is a lot of opportunity for you to shape the environment to your advantage. How? Because you are introducing something new in the environment. Because you are doing that, you have got this opportunity. If you do not take advantage of the opportunity, then somebody else will devise rules and regulations which may not be to your advantage. So it is for you to be able to take advantage of this. Again, you know, going back to this capital allocation, since I mentioned Swiggy, you know, Swiggy was only delivering from restaurants. Moment this pandemic happened, they have created this ecosystem for grocery development immediately. I'm sure they would have allocated capital. It was very, very quick thinking on their part that people would require this service, and they have moved very quickly to do this. Some others have also done it, like Grofers and others. Now, next point, collaboration with other players. Now, when you are in a situation of crisis, then you need to keep your ears and eyes open for collaboration, even sometimes collaboration with competition. I'll give you an extreme example. You look at the telecom industry. Telecom industry, whereas Airtel, Vodafone, Jio, they're all fighting each other, but they share telecom towers. So that's a resource which they share, because they have all realized that all of them have to gain if they share towers, and it's to the advantage of everybody. So once you realize that, there is no harm in collaborating even with competition, leave alone other companies. So you could collaborate with digital platforms and increase the collective resilience. What this does is, again, if you take a telecom company, if it was dependent only on its own towers, utilization of each tower would not be to the extent if you were to share the towers. The towers can be run much more efficiently if you share them. So in a situation of pandemic, like this situation of crisis, you are much more resilient than a company which is totally dependent on its own resource. So a collaborative model works. So what are the benefits of building resilience? So the first benefit is anticipation benefit. What is anticipation benefit? You are able to recognize threats earlier than others because you have built redundancy, you have got diverse cultural background, people with diverse cultural background working in your office, and you are more adaptable, you have built-in modularity. Because of all this, you are able to anticipate threats earlier than others. So you can take earlier action. Next is impact benefits, ability to withstand shocks. So obviously, because you have built in the resilience, you are able to withstand shocks much better. Recovery speed benefit, irrespective of what people say, when you are under total lockdown, everybody is suffering. So it is not important that all companies suffered in the month of April and May. What is important is how quickly some have been able to regain lost ground from June onwards. That is more important. So you are able to recover faster. And of course, the outcome benefit, increased fitness for new post-shock environment. So how to become a more resilient company? Number one, you seek advantage in diversity. So as I have explained, once you have this diversity built into your company, there are umpteen advantages which flow from there. So you also have a look forward approach, because in the short run, crisis may appear tactical and operational. This is what I was telling you about, that suddenly you feel that the sky has fallen over your head. But on longer term or longer time scale, new needs and incapacitation of competitors create opportunities. Now, this happens in every crisis. What happens is that while some companies are able to recover quickly because they are more resilient, there are many which fall by the wayside. So there is vacation of markets which take place in every field. It is normally players which have liquidity issues, which are highly leveraged. They are not able to withstand such crisis. And in that situation, the resilient companies can quickly build on their market shares. So this is very important. One thing which has happened during this crisis is the unorganized sector is facing a real crisis and they are unable to recover, many of them. So this is an opportunity for the larger players. And also new needs have cropped up like home delivery, sanitization products, personal mobility. Number three, you take a collaborative systems view, which I have described, an optimization model rather than a maximization model. You optimize the total system rather than your own subsystem. Next one is important. Now, once you have done all this, you cannot be measuring performance based on the usual financial ratios and the traditional model, or growth, mere growth in market share and so on. You have to be able to measure flexibility, adaptation, collaboration. You have to build in these matrices into your organization such that you are able to measure these things as well, because you have to reward people who are taking the company down this path. So measurement of performance is important. And you have to price diversity, because you need alternate ways of looking at the problems in times of crisis. You know, Alibaba founder Jack Ma, you must have heard of him. He sees change as the default and not stability. So going forward, he has said that change is what will be constant. Stability won't be not. You may have periods of stability, but what will be constant is change. So resilience is less about occasional adjustments under extreme circumstances and more about building organizations and supporting systems predicated on constant change and experimentation. So when you have a resilient company, you're constantly experimenting, adapting to new environments, and you are obviously much better placed than your competition. And finally, resilience will be a source of competitive advantage for companies going into the future. The famous American artist by the name of Andy Warhol, I don't know how many of you have heard of him, but he famously said once that in the future, everyone will be world famous for 15 minutes. He made this statement in the context of art, but it is relevant for business as well, because in today's business world, transient high performance is commonplace. It is sustained performance by resilient companies that stand apart. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I end here and I await your questions. Can't hear you, Jayanta.
Sir, you are not audible.
Yeah.
Sir, we can't listen you.
No, I'm able to.
We
Sir?
can't hear you, Jayanta.
No, I can't hear him.
Sandeep, go ahead. Sandeep.
Yeah, can I ask a question, sir?
Hello.
Mr. Shubhi Chakravorty.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm known as Siddhartha Sengupta. I'm a faculty member here. So I had a question regarding this pandemic and building resilience. The World Economic Forum has said in that there will be a deficit in trade to the extent of 13 to 30% global trade. Now, what should the global companies do in order to lessen that effect, to the extent possible?
See, companies on their own won't be able to affect global trade on an aggregated basis, because global trade is the aggregation of the economic activity of various nations, companies taken together. So companies on their own can try to find out what are the opportunities, because while there is 13 to 30% reduction in global trade, there are also many companies which will not exist anymore.
Yeah.
Therefore, the companies which remain, the resilient companies, they'll be able to take advantage of this situation and be able to actually expand their business. So I expect going forward, the companies which will remain, they will become much bigger. So we are going to see an era in which we are going to see rapid expansion of the companies which will survive. Many, of course, will die in the process. And of course, the emergence of companies in new sectors. A lot of new sectors will be opening up or has opened up. The cloud platform, software as service, all these are really opening up now. And I do not know whether you are aware, but real estate, which was thought to be facing difficulty, actually commercial real sector is going through a kind of a boom, because huge amount of space is being booked today by these home delivery companies and Amazons and so on and so forth. They are really expanding at a rapid pace. And I just heard one realtor saying that he has never had it so good. I mean,
Okay.
he invests a lot in the commercial space. So he feels that it is really booming. So what I'm trying to tell you is, in any situation, this the corporate situation is not different from the biological situation. Actually, if you go down history, I'm not talking about recent history. If you go down study the history of this earth, you will see that new species have developed at various points in time when older species have got wiped out. For example, once the dinosaurs got wiped out, it was only then that the apes and some of the Homo groups had an opportunity to grow. So the cosmic situation, or the way the earth has developed, if you were to study it, there are lots of lessons for the corporate world as to how, particularly with respect to adaptability. You will see that how species have adapted, how they have been able to survive, and how the death of one species or one kind of environment has led to the total destruction of one kind of species and the growth of another kind of species. So this is how the earth has developed. Now, as human beings, you may feel that, this earth is ours, and, we rule this earth and we will rule it the way we want to. So actually, it doesn't happen like that.
Absolutely not, right.
No, we feel the earth is ours. Actually, we are just a part of this earth. And going forward, if you are unable to adapt, as we are struggling today, as you can see, against the virus, and what is the virus doing ultimately? It is part of evolution. Those of us who are unable to stand up to the virus will disappear. Simple. It feels bad to accept it, but that's the way it is. And those of us who will be able to survive the virus will evolve into species which are able to withstand these kind of virus. Then the virus has to evolve again to be able to see what it can do. So this is how we develop, and corporate history is replete with these examples. So I do not think there is cause for great doom and gloom.
Okay.
There are opportunities everywhere. One needs to rethink and replan and reboot.
So what you said, the last part of what you said just now. Is it? We hear that from globalization, the trade will move to regionalization or nationalization. So how far do you think it is? It will happen, or whether?
See, these are.
Achha, sir, before you answer, I just thought I will just put in. I think can I be heard now? Okay.
Yes.
So I think for the students and faculty members, one very important thing I wanted to say. First, I said that Mr. Shubhit Chakraborty took the class as an LCAP professor, giving so many points. So I think all the students would have noted it now. And now I'm thinking, like IIMs, we are having autonomous status. So what I'm thinking, I'm requesting to all the faculty, especially to Mr. Shumon Don, Chairman PGDM program, that I think this webinars like this should be a part of the syllabus. I need to tell the faculty that, questions will directly come, because today's lecture, all webinars are not so good. But in this webinars, it was like a strategy session. So Dr. Don, let us tell all the faculties, I think because all the students are informed, let us ask at least one question, you decide which paper, because this will be like, I really enjoy. The other thing I want to tell all my students was, there's a word called connecting the dots. Today I can tell you, if I was again 22 years old, I could understand and comprehend, and Mr. Siddharth Sengupta at 60 can comprehend whatever Mr. Chakraborty is saying. But maybe at the age of 20 to 23, you may not be able to comprehend. But it's connecting the dots means when you're suddenly 35, and as Mr. Chakraborty said, that a professor had told him that short-term CEOs have long-term careers. So that may not have any meaning when Mr. Chakraborty was 24. But suddenly it means a lot. So if you can remember this, it is a very, very vital thing. And this is no Harvard Business School, no Princeton can teach you that short-term CEOs or short-term managers have long-term careers. What it means is that when you actually join, we are talking about placements, but after you get the first job, quickly deliver results. Because like you are looking for good companies, the companies are also looking for you. And like Chakraborty said, that in pandemic, maybe Exide is not retrenching, but most companies will be retrenching people. So the weakest will be retrenched, right? So if you are a manager, you are an executive who has just joined, but जो है काम का manager जो एकदम deliver करता है results, the boss feels कि इसको काम देने से PPT बन जाएगा, so काम देने से PPT का animation अच्छा बनेगा, so काम देने से Excel वो जल्दी कर लेता है. So you have to have that survival instinct. Like Prashid Mondol, he is a first year student, but he's so mature. He said कि sir activities दिखना चाहिए. So that is the word I still remember. Activities दिखना चाहिए. And one thing like most important thing besides resilient companies, I remember Chakraborty telling me before also that the strongest, the fittest will survive. That Mr. Chakraborty, going beyond Exide and this thing, from your wisdom, though you're not a medical doctor, from your wisdom, can you tell us, sir, how to increase immunity? So that is of great concern to my faculty and students. So can you tell us, sir, how to increase immunity from your wisdom?
Immunity has got two aspects.
Right.
The body and the mind.
Right.
So as far as the body is concerned, of course, you have to eat healthy and exercise. So those are given. It's not nothing new or nothing unique in this suggestion. Now, most people during the pandemic have improved their health because they're eating at home. So most people that I have talked to, they have said that they're not eating outside. So obviously, home cooked food is better. But more importantly, I think it is important that immunity also has got a lot to do with your state of mind. It's important that you engage your mind in some kind of productive activity, or if you have still spare time, then you can think of activities like meditation and other things which will give you, because a resilient body along with a resilient mind is what gives you immunity. I'm drawing from today's topic. So just having a body and having a weak mind does not help. It will only spoil your health. So strengthening of the mind is also necessary. And in this, I can share with you one thing. Most people actually, what really troubles us? What troubles us is our own thoughts. Because when you are sleeping or thinking, then you are thinking that something may be troubling you, something like that. You have to remember that the thoughts don't belong to you. Thoughts are extraneous to you, to your being. This is very important. Because I don't know whether there are professors from HR here, but lately
yes,
a lot of thought experiments are being conducted. And one such experiment is to imagine that you are sitting by the side of a brook and water is flowing. So as you are sitting there, you are getting thoughts. So you take each thought and imagine that you put it on a leaf and let it float by you. So that thought is gone. Then next thought comes, you do the same thing. Over a period of time, you realize that these thoughts come and go. These thoughts actually are external to you. So that is the first point of realization when you are getting troubled, is that what is troubling you is not yourself. I mean, it's your thoughts which are troubling you. And once you are able to manage that, then you are in a much better state of mental health. This requires some practice. Of course, in our country, we have a lot of experience of people who meditate, who are spiritualists. So a lot of lessons are there in every field. But these are, I'm talking about simple things. Everybody is not Ramakrishna Paramahamsa or Vivekananda. So a simple man, what can he do? Or a simple woman, what can she do to be able to relieve oneself from stress? Because what happens to thoughts is that, first of all, they are external to you. They are figments of your imagination and they form a do loop circuit in your mind. So the same thing goes round and round and round. you will notice that you are unable to sleep because the same thought keeps on coming again and again, and you feel scared and you do not know what to do. So these are the ways. Of course, I digressed a bit into thoughts.
No. Mr. Dr. Shubhendu Majumdar, if you are, can you please react? You are our faculty from HR, and your thoughts on this, Dr. Shubhendu Majumdar.
Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, Mr. Shubhit Chakraborty. You are having a very excellent lecture. And what are the points you have just covered? The meditation. Yes, it is. I agree with you that we are not Ramakrishna Paramahansa or Swami Vivekananda. But sir, we can follow their thoughts. And a meditative mind means it is not exactly sometime in mix up with spirituality. Meditation, it is not for Hindus, not for Muslim, not for Christian. It is our national property, and it is 5,000 years back onward. It is continuing, and it is the scientists are saying that each soul is potentially divine. So therefore, infinite power with this finite body. That only meditation can give these our students, the young communities, to grow further and to go for further immunity. So the points you have told, these are very excellent. That you have told, engage mind with productivity of mind. That is resilience. So the students and also young generation, those who are under stress, basically our stress coming from lifestyle. So if our lifestyle having a routine task, and we can come through a routine with some meditative mind, I think excellently everybody will be getting immunity. So I support and I agree with your deliberation, and I am also thankful to my director, sir, to give me opportunity to say something. And thank you, sir, to Professor Shubhit Chakraborty, sir.
Dr. Shubhendu is not only faculty of HR, he is very close to Ramakrishna Mission, Belur Math and all that. Acha, we have a question from our marketing faculty, PR Bhattacharya. So PRB, can you ask it directly instead of through me? Because Shubhit Chakraborty sir is actually the marketing guru. So it is better that the marketing faculty.
So good afternoon,
Yes,
good afternoon, Dr. Sam, good afternoon, Mr. Chakraborty. It was, very interesting and encouraging to hear from you. I've noted on all the points of what you were saying all this while. And when you say that this functional redundancy is to be taken care of, right? One question came into my mind. That is, what strategies should a brand manager adopt in this new normal to maintain resilience?
See, you're talking about man management. I think
Not a brand manager.
Brand.
What strategies should a brand manager adopt in this new normal to tackle or to take care of this new resilience?
This, as I've told you, this situation has spawned a number of opportunities. Now, let me give you some examples. Look at Savlon. Savlon was basically a germicide which was there it's a competitor to Dettol, and you had cuts and bruises, so you would immediately put it. Now, from there, the brand manager of Savlon, let us say, belongs to ITC. I think he or she has immediately spotted the opportunity that this pandemic has offered. So immediately they have diversified into sanitization sprays. So now you will find those Savlon sanitization sprays. Same thing has happened to Lifebuoy. So you are asking what the brand manager should adopt. I think the first thing the brand manager should do is to open his or her mind to what are the brand extensions which are possible. Because that is immediately, the Lifebuoy is basically in the health segment. So it's very simple for the brand manager to extend that product to a sanitization spray. Same thing for Savlon. So all these companies have moved very fast, I must say.
Yes.
Able to do this product, create these products and bring them to the market. Because right now, the first thing is once you come from outside, your bag and other things you require, everybody's, whether you require to do it or not is another matter, but you feel more comfortable if you can spray your briefcase or something so that at least inside the house, you feel that you are safe.
Right.
Yeah.
Immediately they have spotted this opportunity and they have come up with it. Yeah. So likewise, I feel the first thing the brand manager should do is think of what are the extensions which are possible, which have come.
So,
same thing, you should take two-wheeler.
PRV, 1 minute.
Just do another example. if you take two-wheeler manufacturers, you know the way the home service has really expanded now. And it is free of any lockdown. Now, normal two-wheeler was meant to carry the rider and a pillion.
Yes.
But now the two-wheelers, if you look at it, they are carrying not only the rider in case of home delivery, this thing, but also a lot of goods which
Stuff.
that person has to deliver.
Right.
So can the two-wheeler be made more accommodative for carrying these things? Immediately it will have a market. Understand? Because people are buying today two-wheelers only for this activity because there are jobs.
Yes.
There's a scarcity of jobs in this.
Right. Right.
So immediately the brand manager should look at these opportunities. What are the new opportunities and jump on them.
Achha, I have a question now from Devirupa Mukherjee. She is our student, final year student. She actually had worked with the Ritz-Carlton group in Bangalore and she's worked Genpact. So Devirupa, can you better ask the question? Can you unmute and put your video and ask the question, Devirupa?
Sir, good afternoon, sir.
No, video also, Devirupa, video. You want to see the Ritz-Carlton girl.
Sir, I have opened it, sir.
Why? Next time I don't want to hear any excuse, Devirupa. This is the last time
Sir,
I want to hear
I have
excuse.
opened it, sir.
Now we can see you, yes. So please ask the question.
Yes, sir. So my question is, sir, how can the organizational resilience be improved, sir?
Okay, I will just amplify that, Shubhita, though it's not exciting. She has actually worked in the hotel industry. So basically, like your advice to the hospitality industry, what do you think they could have done better, or have they done enough, like Swiggy or something? So, and they
hospitality and travel sector, they are badly affected, as you know, because people are not going out.
Yeah.
People are not traveling. So what can you do? And people who are basically in the culinary business, chefs and so on and so forth, they are facing really a lot of difficulty. Some of the things few of them have done is, number one is, many of them have started home delivery.
Yes.
I know Hyatt, they have started laundry services.
Yes.
So right now, people are wary of giving clothes to the laundry, or, even their costly clothes, because you don't know after it comes back how to sanitize it, all kinds of questions. So they are promising that they will be able to give it to you. They're giving that assurance. So if a chain like Hyatt, they can think of laundry services. That is very, very what should I say, unique kind of thinking, because earlier this was unimaginable. Their laundry services was for their own internal use and consumption. So basically what they are doing is, the hospitality chains, they are trying to find out what are their skill sets which they have. And they are trying their best to reach those products or services to the customer's doorstep. That's the only way they can survive in the short run. Long run, of course, everybody is hoping things will come back to normal. But these are some of the steps which are being taken by the hotels. Maybe some of them, if they have a pool of cars, they may think of running some kind of, chauffeur service.
Yeah.
Those people who are keen to have a sanitized car or something like that. Those kinds of things they have to do. There is no option.
But sir, one thing we have to appreciate, that Devirupa has done a very unique thing. After hotel management, she has diversified her risk. And instead of not only being happy with Ritz-Carlton, she has joined Calcutta Business School. So basically what happens is, now she doesn't have to depend anymore on the hotel industry. So Devirupa, congratulations for taking the good decision. Now what you should do, Devirupa, is to invite your other friends to come to Calcutta Business School, so that they listen to eminent people like Shubhit Chakraborty and not only be attracted and remain cocooned in the hospitality. Moving on, we have another lady, Sumita Sarkar. She is a first year student, Shubhita. She is done her Institute of Company Secretaries also. So Shubhita, can you ask the question directly, beta? Give a small introduction of yourself, and then Sumita, give us short 1 second, 30 seconds introduction, then ask.
Good afternoon, sir. I actually have a very bad throat, so I can't speak much.
Okay. Okay.
So that's an allergic reaction I'm having. Because of that, sir, I have completed my graduation in 2015. Then with that, I was also pursuing my company secretary. I have completed that. Then I was working with Ernst & Young GDS in Bangalore as auditor, senior auditor there. So basically all my work was related to the foreign companies. And then I took my job because I came back and I got married. And then I plan to again do my MBA, brush myself up properly, back to work culture again. So that's about me.
Sumita, you have been very resilient in your planning. I think you did not ask. I'll ask the question in your behalf because you have posted there. So I think, sir, we have to congratulate this lady, Sumita. She is, managing work-life balance. She's married, but she's not stopped learning. She's a full-time student. So Sumita, please take care of health. We'll discuss that later. But she's asking that, what key leadership messages need to be amplified at the time of this kind of a COVID or pandemic? What are the key leadership messages which a person like you, leader like you, needs to amplify? Thank you, Sumita.
See, number one is during any crisis, it is very important that the leader is visible. How do you make yourself visible? Obviously through online, because pandemic does not allow you to physically visit your factories or regions. So you have to be visible. So just being visible is not good enough. You need to then communicate. So during any crisis, it is important that you communicate. If you have seen some of these war movies, you will see how the military generals during a period of crisis, they have been able to communicate. So communication is a very important skill set for any leader, more so during the period of crisis. And some leaders can, speak well like Obama. Some people can write well like Jawaharlal Nehru. So depending on which skill set you have, you utilize it to the full and be in regular communication. This is very important. I'll give you an example in Exide. Earlier, we used to have the topmost management committee at Exide. Just below the board is called the executive committee. So we used to meet once a month to discuss all issues and take decisions. During the crisis, we are meeting every day, actually. Every day at 12 we meet. And because there are new issues coming up every day and we need to address them right then and there. We cannot wait for 1 month to lapse before we address issues. So speed of decision making is important because in a crisis, nothing waits. So that is very important. So communication, speed of decision making. Third thing which comes to my mind is you must have empathy because various people are going through different kinds of crisis, personal crisis in their houses, in their work sphere. Many people may have lost their jobs or they are fearing they may lose jobs. Or there are others who have, let's say COVID patients in the family, they don't know what to do. Many have lost their near and dear ones. So, and in spite of that, people are soldiering on, trying to work for the company. So you must have a sense of appreciation for that because everybody does not have the luxury of being able to stay in sanitized environments and be able to direct from sanitized offices. There are salespeople who are working in the field, going from one shop to another in this crisis. So you have to have a sense of appreciation and you have to empathize with their situation because if they fall short somewhere or if they have some issues, then it is necessary for you to understand that. So the key word here is flexibility. You have to be flexible. This is very important,
right.
Particularly when you are working from home. Earlier in office, maybe 9:30 meant 9:30, so you have to come at 9:30, the meeting is at 9:30. But here, because people are working from home, everybody does not have a 10-roomed house. People may be living in 2-room apartments or even 1 room in many cases. And during this situation, many of the personal, situations, they are very stretched and causing a lot of stress in the family. So therefore, you have to be accommodative and you have to understand the other person's situation because what this does is, in a situation of crisis, if you are able to do that as a leader, then immediately the person at the other end thinks that, yes, this man understands my problem. Let me see what best I can do for the company.
Right.
It requires open-mindedness, flexibility of approach, empathy, and strong communication skills. This is very important.
Next question is from our chairman PGDM, Dr. Shumon Don. So Dr. Don, you can ask directly. Dr. Don, unmute yourself kindly. Shubhita, आपका कतो time आछे हाथे? How much time you have? Free time more?
So maybe another 10 minutes.
Okay, ठीक है. We'll conclude. Yeah, Shumon Da. Unmute yourself, please unmute. Shumon, Mr. Shumon Don, unmute.
Thank you. Thanks, I am audible. Okay.
Yes, very clear. Very clear.
Thank you. So the two questions are coming in my mind. That in this crisis period, number question is coming in my mind. What would be the leader's role? Because if it is a good company, there are two things. Things are coming. The companies may terminate the employees, or companies will keep the companies, retain the employees into their organization. So as a good company like Excite, as I want to ask Mr. Subhit Chakraborty, what will be the roles of the leader, the true leader? And number two, the question, suppose in this business, they have lost their demands. So how they will recover the demands in the short run, or whether there will be any kind of strategies that they will take, and what will be the business model in this situation? The two questions. The leader's role in this situation.
The leader's role I've already answered.
You just said.
Previous,
but he's saying of the demand, how to do, what to do if the demand is disrupted.
So demand, basically, as I've said, that you have to spot opportunities which exist. Every industry there are opportunities. New opportunities which have come because of this. You have to spot those opportunities, and you will have to then allocate capital to those new ideas. This is very important, because if you don't do that, to react, other people will take advantage of it. For example, let me tell you, during this Amphan, many of you may have experienced that Airtel and Vodafone, they were completely, at least in Calcutta, they became dysfunctional. And the speed with which Jio entered the space is amazing. Immediately, word got around that Jio was unaffected. I don't know how they managed it. But the way they have captured the imagination, and now because online is a must for everybody, because even if you are not doing online work from office, your children are doing online classes.
Yes.
For every family, this has become important. The speed with which Jio has moved in Calcutta is amazing. It shows how agile they are, and this agility is very important. So therefore, you have to spot opportunities and you have to move fast. So the leader, as I have said earlier also, that leader must be able to communicate, leader must be flexible, leader must have empathy, and leader must have quick decision-making abilities. Because in this situation, you cannot deter, or you cannot be consumed with analysis paralysis. Because the environment is very unforgiving, and if you are not able to take advantage, somebody else will immediately. So Airtel was late, and I know Jio moved in very fast.
Right.
Many apartments.
Right.
Very good example.
Right.
And Shubhita, one question which you can give to the youngsters, your secret sauce, what is the advice to these youngsters if they all want to do well in their life? What is the basic qualities they should develop?
See, what I will tell all of you, which I tell others also, young people who sometimes come to me, don't put the cart before the horse. What do I mean by that? What I mean by that is that I think every human being, they have certain skill sets in which they are better than others. Recognize what those skill sets are, and each individual may have different skill sets. Number one. Number two, try to find out what is your passion. So you may ask me, how do I find out what is my passion? I don't have any particular passion, like young people reply, I like to do all the things which young people do, but then what is passion? So my answer is very simple. Your passion is that activity which makes you lose sense of time. What do I mean by that? For example, if you are doing any activity, let's say you like to play cricket. When you play cricket, you forget how many hours you have been batting or what you have been doing. Whereas if you are doing an activity where you are continuously looking at the watch, what time is it? What time is it? When will it end? Like you are sitting in a class and you are continuously keeping a watch on your wrist. When will the class end? That means that is not your passion. So try to find out what is your passion and that activity which makes you lose sense of time. Whatever that is. Maybe writing, reading, running, whatever. Number 3, follow your passion.
Right.
So you may ask me, no, but I want to make money. Let me tell you one thing, very frankly, if you follow your passion, money will also follow you. But if you are in the wrong groove, you may or may not make money, but you will never be happy. So identify your passion and then go after it. It doesn't matter whether your passion is to cook food, in which case you can become a chef. Top people in every profession, they earn a lot of money. Don't worry about that.
Right. That's it.
And ultimately, no, I have not ended.
No.
Just one more sentence.
No.
Ultimately, remember that all of you, secretly in your mind, all of you want to be happy. All of us. So when you have entered business school, when you have entered college, you always have that thought in your mind that I want to be happy. And so it's a good thought, nothing wrong with it. But you have to define what is happiness for you. Now the question is, somewhere along the line, as you do your MBA and you go into the wider world, you equate happiness with money, and that is where the problem starts. Money is not happiness. Money can be a conduit or a route for you to obtain your happiness. But if you are in the wrong groove, you will not be happy irrespective of how much money you earn. So it is important for all of you to find out your passion, because if you are following your passion, you will be happy, and then the money will also follow. So this is very important, and I would advise that if you are very unclear, because young people, they do not always know their mind, seek outside help. Go to a counselor, try to understand, maybe he or she the counselor can help you find out your passion.
I think, Shubhita, it has been 1 hour, 20 minutes. So it's a long time. We thank you from the heart of hearts. Perhaps we could not take all the questions that they've asked, but we sincerely thank you. And though I hope that, government will allow us to open the campus. In that case, we have a very, very good infrastructure, one of the best after IIM Joka, because IIM is government. But after IIM, I think one of the best campuses. So we'll want you to kindly come to our campus and address the students once again, as per your kind time, and bless them. And I want to tell the students that, whatever he told us is not found in any books, about whether it's about immunity of the body and mind together. So you'll be able to connect the dots. And I'm sure that after 15 years, you're going to say that, one gentleman had come from Exide. It was so inspiring. Even if you may not remember the name fully, you will still remember after, 15 years discussing with your friends. So, and the teachers are advised to, please frame questions, because that's how it becomes practical. Otherwise, it will be slow learning and fast forgetting. So, Mr. Shubhit Chakraborty sir, sincere thanks. We're very grateful. And we look forward to you being the managing director of Exide from our side. And we look forward to you coming to a campus.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
For patiently listening.
No, it's very, very nice. It was a more of professors like class, a very nice class.
It was a wonderful experience for me as well.
Yeah.
Thank you very much and wish you all the best. Stay safe.
Yeah. Thank you.
And be happy.
Yeah, be happy.